Hey, good afternoon. This is Mayor Valensky with Driving Markets. Okay, so I've had quite a lot of requests and quite a lot of inquiries from their clients who've been asking to give a bit more explanation what's going on with the UK and how that is impacted on UK bonds, which are gilts, and the pound. They want to know what exactly has happened that there's been such a crisis. So, in order to understand what's going on with the UK, we're going to have to rewind to Boris Johnson. So, Boris Johnson was the Prime Minister running the country. The Conservatives won the election by a landslide, had plenty of seats. And then during the Corona period, Boris Johnson transgressed and had a couple of parties during lockdown. And those parties have agitated everyone. And the reason being they agitated everyone because everyone was in a lockdown. And meanwhile, at 10 Downing Street, there were parties going on and the public didn't like it. So it got a code name called Partygate, which is after the famous Richard Nixon case of investigating and spying on his fellow partisans in the US. That was called Watergate. So everything since then, the spying has now got a new cliche name, so they're called a Partygate. Now, Boris Johnson was also claimed to, or there's accusations of him lying to Parliament, and that's under investigation at the moment. And that caused a lack of confidence or vote of no confidence with Boris Johnson, and the Tories, the Conservatives, had to find a new leader, so they went to the vote. And the two main candidates were Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, and Liz Truss won. Now, during her campaign, Liz Truss said that she's going to boost the economy, she's going to improve the UK standing, get better business deals within Europe and the globe and across the world. And she's also going to tackle the massive hike in energy prices. So when she came in within already a couple of days, she said that they're going to cap energy prices at £2,500 per annum. And that was welcomed by most of Joe Public, by most of the UK. And the reason why it was welcomed is quite simple, because who likes to pay high energy prices? If we just go back a couple of years, the average house was paying 50, 70, 80 pounds a month for energy, and now they're paying anywhere between £300, £400, £500 a month for gas and electricity. Remember, the gas has gone up as a result of the war in Ukraine, where Russia is potentially using or maybe using the gas as an economic leverage, an economic lever to put pressure on the Europeans that if they don't cooperate or don't pull in line, then he just turns off the gas. And by as a side point, he probably is going to reduce the gas exports in December to Europe as a punishment because Europeans and the West are putting sanctions on Putin and Russia. So the gas prices went up, and Liz Truss said that, you know what, we're going to help Joe Public, we're going to help the UK, and we're going to cap prices at £2,500 maximum per year. Now, that's great, but where's the money going to come from? And when she was cornered on that particular point, there was, okay, we'll borrow it. We'll borrow it from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Again, that's all great. They go borrow money. But what the country's doing is borrowing and borrowing money in order to gain popularity and satisfy the public and trying to manage some sort of energy expense. Now, you can borrow money when your status within the global markets is very, very solid. And the UK has AAA status. It's considered a very strong economy as far as money, as borrowing money is concerned, or issuing bonds. So that was the first thing she came out with. However, the next major disaster step was the Chancellor at the time, Kwasi Kwarteng, came out with a ridiculous package that was going to reduce corporation tax from 25 to 19%, and he was going to reduce taxation from 45 to 40%, which would only affect the higher tax bracket, so the rich would benefit from that reduction, where the middle class or the lower level income, lower level earnings would not benefit from that particular tax break. That caused a storm, and because it was a £45 billion giveaway, the next question obviously was asked, well, where's the money going to come from to fund all of this? So you take them both together, there's billions of pounds being given away. Now, billions of pounds have been given away during a time when you've got hyperinflation, or high inflation. So when you've got high inflation, you start printing money, just giving it away. That's going to further add to inflation and knock investors' confidence as to the UK knows what it's doing. And that caused an immediate pressure cooker crisis on Liz Truss and on the Conservative Party. And that went on for effectively 4 weeks, 3.5, 4 weeks, huge pressure built up. Now, during that particular time, we've got to now just move on to another area to explain what's happening in financial markets, and we'll come back to Liz Truss. When a country wants to fund itself, what it does, it issues a bond. Now, in the UK, the bonds are called gilts, gilt-edged bonds. So they're supposed to be rock-solid investments, okay? So in Germany, they're called bunds. In Japan, they're called samurais. In the US, they're called US treasuries, okay? 10-year notes. But in the UK, they're called gilts, gilt-edged bonds. And they can be 2 years, 10 years, 30 years. Now, when there's a crisis, or when the investors don't understand or lose confidence within the country, then what they'll do is they'll sell that country's bonds. And what happened during this last 3.5 weeks is that investors began to sell their holdings of UK gilts, which is the UK bond. And when they sold the gilt, when they sold the bond, the price goes down. It's like anything. If you keep on selling something, the price is going to go down until demand picks up. And when the price went down, the yield, which is the return on your money, increases. Why does it increase? Because when you issue a bond at one level, and you're going to give a fixed amount of money as a interest, as a coupon, as a dividend, as a yield on that particular bond. As the price moves down, the yield goes up. As the price goes up, then the yield goes down, because the direct ratio between the price of the bond and the interest rate it's giving, they're both fixed. It's okay. So as the price moves up and down, the yield, which is the percentage of that price, will move up and down as well. So the yields moved up. As the yields moved up, that is a declaration of lack of confidence in government bonds. In other words, you're going to get more for your money if you buy this bond. Well, if you get more for your money if you buy this bond, that means effectively that that bond is not worth as much. Why is it not worth as much? Because you don't have confidence in investing in it, so we're going to have to give you more money. We'll give you more money if you buy that bond. And the bond price went down, the yield went up, and that was, as I said, a clear declaration of a no confidence vote in the UK economy. If that continued, so it went to a high of about 4.74, I think. If that continued, then UK would have had difficulty raising money in financial markets to support itself and to pay for the infrastructure and the running of the country, or it would have had to pay more money out in order to get money in. In other words, it would have had to have offered a higher return on the loan in order for people, investors, to invest in it. In other words, if I come along and say, you know what, you give me £1 million, I'll give you 1%, okay? If you give me £10 million, I'll give you 1.5%. But if the credit status of that country goes down, then that £1 million will say, okay, in order to get the £1 million in, we'll give you 3%. I go, okay, that's attractive. It's still not attractive enough. You know what, we'll give you 4%. In other words, the UK would have to pay more money, higher rate, higher interest, higher yield, to get the funding in from the international banks on their gilt issues. So it sounds a bit complicated, but it's quite simple. It's how much would it cost for them to borrow the money, okay? For the UK to borrow the money. Previously, it cost them 1%, 2%. Now it's going to cost them 3.5% to borrow the money, 4%, 4.5%. It gets very expensive. So this crisis created a crisis within the bond sector, which would have been a crisis within the UK, which would have meant that the UK would have moved from a solid AAA status to maybe AA status or A+, and that would make it more expensive to borrow the money. Moving from there onto the currency, why did the pound drop so significantly? Because the pound is a reflection of how strong the economy is, or the health of the economy. And now that the pound is low, investors, analysts, economists and banks are viewing the UK economy as weak, and therefore the pound is weak as a reflection of the UK economy. That's why the pound went down. In order to combat, the solution to this is very, very simple. What the Chancellor needs to do, with the new Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, and he has proposed this, is to make significant cuts in public expenditure, therefore rein in the finances and have less money going out, therefore we can balance the books. That will send a shot of confidence in financial markets, and the yield on those bonds will drop. The pound will probably go up. The other thing needs to be done on the other side is with the Governor of the Bank of England, called Andrew Bailey. I'm not a big fan of his, but this is what needs to be done. He should have, 4 weeks ago, raised interest rates by 100 basis points, and that would have sent stability in the pound. The pound would have gone up against the dollar, cable, euro, and other major currencies, and would have stabilized the pound. Again, a boost of confidence, but he didn't do that. And this wishy-washiness, this UK wishy-washiness with the Bank of England, fathing, should we do it, not do it, should we do it, a little bit, is causing a level of concern amongst financial markets. So they're selling the pound and they are selling the bonds. So if they were to take those two actions, reining public finance, and maybe the Governor of the Bank of England go and buy back £100 billion worth of bonds and raise interest rates at the same time significantly, then you would have that would be a major confidence move for financial markets. Okay, so that explains a little bit regarding the bonds and the pound movement. Going back to Liz Truss, what Liz Truss did is she made a fundamental mistake. She kept making U-turns because she made a mistake at the beginning. What she should have done on day one is said, sorry guys, got this completely wrong. I'm making one U-turn. We're cancelling everything. We're starting again. We're going to look in depth at what needs to be done, and there's going to be this is going to be the action, A, B, C, D, E. But she didn't. She kept dilly-dallying, and therefore she lost confidence. So the next Prime Minister, whether it's Rishi or whether it's whoever it's going to be, has to be dynamic, charismatic, has to be full of confidence, and has to be discerning. They have to speak to the economists and speak to the markets and give them the confidence that they know what they're doing. Cutbacks, increase in interest rates, buy back the bonds, and improve stability within the UK. That will send the yields down, the pound up, and the UK will be in a much better footing to finance itself over the next 5 years, considering that there's likelihood of going into a recession. So hopefully that's explained a little bit more in depth as to the relationship between the bonds, Liz Truss, the UK government, the pound dropping, financial markets. Hopefully that's given you a bit of background. So this is Mayor Walensky with Driving Markets. Have a good day. Speak to you next week.